If you take life for granted, I need you to watch this video. My name is Jack, and I was paralysed at 13 years old. I grew up in Australia, and just like any other Australian, we had it pretty good. I'm blessed to be born in this country. I did pretty good in school. I had a good group of friends. I got teased here and there, but like everyone did to a degree. I played a lot of sport, I was into football, and I even started breakdancing, and a couple of other students did, but they quit after a few weeks. Like, it was a bit of a phase, but for some reason I just kept at it. I liked it so much. I had a good relationship with my family, and I had a really good childhood. I couldn't be more thankful of it. I was very blessed to have it. Heading into high school though, I did not realize how hard it would be to fit in. Battling all these types of new emotions and going through puberty, it just felt like a roller coaster. I felt so awkward at times. I was always nervous. I always felt embarrassed for the things I said. But at the end of the day, it wasn't too bad. It was just like a typical teenage life. Nothing could prepare me though for what was going to happen next, because my life would change forever. It's 2013, September, and it was the school holidays. And one of my friends was actually coming over. But upon waking up that morning, I woke up with huge chest pain. And the only way I can describe it is that it felt like someone was punching me in the chest constantly and constantly. And I told my mum, but I didn't think much of it. I just thought something was happening in my body and then it would eventually go away. So I took some Panadol, and before I knew it, my friend came over and we got stuck straight into playing the Xbox. We booted up Grand Theft Auto 5 because it just released. And I remember I was playing as Michael, and on the game, I'm running around, I'm shooting people, I'm driving cars, but then my character stopped moving on the screen. And I'm pressing the buttons, and my character's still not moving. So I thought my controller was dead or something. So I looked down, and the light was still on, and I go to press the buttons again, and I realized my fingers weren't moving. So I dropped the controller, and I put my hands together like this, and I could not straighten them, and I could not make a fist like that. They were stuck like this. So I told my mum, and she rushed as fast as she could to the nearest doctor. And I got a blood test, but upon standing up, I collapsed instantly. And the nurses said to my mum that he needs to go to the hospital like right now. So I was able to help myself back up and get back to my feet. And we go to the car, and my mum's driving as fast as she can to the next hospital. And I go into the hospital in the emergency, and I walk in, and I collapsed again. And the nurse behind the counter stood up, looked at me, and stood back down and said nothing. And my mum was staring at her and said, like, "Can you help?" And she goes, "Oh, I didn't see him there," which is funny because she looked directly at me. So she went off to go find a wheelchair, and another nurse walked past me. Mind you, I'm still on the ground. I couldn't lift myself back up at this point. And they were like snickering and laughing at me. And I thought in my head, like, I'm not joking, I cannot get up. I was like in shock. So the other nurse comes back with a wheelchair, but she said she couldn't help me into it because she had a back problem, and my mum also had a back problem. And some random patient's dad, some random father came over, picked me up and put me in the wheelchair. And I'm still to this day forever thankful for him. So we eventually get in to see a doctor, and he said to me, "It's stress." And I thought to myself, stress? What am I stressed about? Like, I'm not that stressed. Like, fitting in school is hard, but he kept saying, "No, you're just stressed." I've seen this before. I've seen some kid, he lost his father and he couldn't walk for a month. And I'm just like, my life isn't that bad. I'm not going through anything traumatic. Like, school's hard to fit in and stuff, but my life isn't that bad to the point where I can't move my body. So the doctor says to go back home, and if anything bad happens, come back to the hospital. So my mum takes me back home, I go back to sleep, and upon waking up, my mum realized I had not been to the bathroom for a full day. So I tried getting up, my legs felt so weak. I had to use the walls to balance myself and get to the bathroom, and I'm holding myself in the bathroom and I just could not go for the life of me. So I told my mum right then to take me back to the hospital, and she said, "I'm taking you to the Royal Children's Hospital." And we get to the emergency, and I couldn't get out the car. And with whatever strength my mum had, because she had a real bad back issue, I forever praise my mum so much for this, but she picked me up with all her might and pulled me over to the emergency inside of the hospital. All these doctors were surrounding me, and they were doing these tests, and one of the doctors grabbed my foot and he just put his finger like that. And I screamed in agony. It felt like my foot was dipped in lava. It was burning like absolute fire. No one knew what was happening, and they put me on laughing gas, and they were doing all these tests, and I wasn't conscious because I was just on laughing gas. I was laughing at nothing. They took the laughing gas off me, and upon becoming more conscious, I had realized that the doctors had put a catheter in my area, to put it lightly. And if you don't know what a catheter is, bless your soul, but it's basically a tube that makes you go to the bathroom because your body physically can't go. And the doctor's talking to my mother and I, and he said if a couple more hours went by, that my bladder would have exploded. And I could only imagine what that would have, to this day, that scares me so much. The doctor also said that I was diagnosed with transverse myelitis, and my mum and I were like, transverse myelitis, like, what is that? And he said, no one knows what causes it, but basically it's a neurological disorder and it's a spinal cord issue, but good cells attack other good cells in the body, and the body basically attacks itself. He basically said that I'm paralyzed from the top of the shoulder to the feet, and in the next coming days, my body's gonna continue to shut down. And I remember seeing my mum's face in that moment, and it felt like the world stopped. Parents are supposed to grow up seeing their children accomplish things and achieve things. And I just remember thinking, like, she's gonna think that she has to go the rest of her life looking after me. And right then, I felt like the biggest loser, the biggest burden, because I didn't want my parents to worry about me. You know, I eventually want to grow up, and I felt like my life was genuinely over. I just turned 13 years old, and I thought that was it. I thought that was the rest of my life. I thought I was never going to get a job, never going to get a family. I'm never going to experience everything, like anything ever again. Like, my life is genuinely done. He also said that the odds of this happening is 1 in a million, and being told that, and basically being told that you'll never walk again, that does something to your psyche. I was in hospital for 32 days, and those 32 days felt like 10 years. Those first few days, I remember just looking down at my body and it not moving. And it felt like a prison. I'm trying to send all these messages from my brain to move my body, and it just felt like absolute hell. I was so frustrated, words cannot describe it. Only the people that are paralyzed can understand the pain, but you can't feel your whole body, but you can feel all the nerves on fire at the same time. And a lot of people go, oh, you can't feel yourself, like you can't move, so you can't feel pain. But that's not how it works. Your nerves feel like fire, and they're ultra sensitive. It is that difficult to explain. There are no words in the English language that can explain how bad the nerve pain felt. I was also in the ICU, and my lungs were being monitored, because if they had shut down, then I would need a ventilator to breathe. I also got chronic fatigue. I was sleeping for like 18-hour days. Any type of head movement, talking, or just mental focus fatigued me so hard. I was on so much medication, and I had to do so many tests, and I had to do MRI scans so many times. I was in that tube for like 2 hours at a time, and all I'm hearing is this buzzing. Like, if you've ever had an MRI, it's the most loudest sound in your ears ever. And to be in there for 2 hours at a time was absolutely hell. It was so miserable. I was taking medication every day, and they said short term, this might help you recover, it might not, it doesn't help with everyone. And they said long term that it's gonna stop you growing, which is probably why I look like a little baby. But about 2 weeks in, I'm getting a tiny bit more movement in my arms, and I could move my fingers a little bit. And all I can say is, thank the Lord that iPads exist, because I remember that just sitting in the hospital bed, and although I couldn't do much, I remember playing games on the iPad, just tapping the screen, and it felt like I was out the real world for a little bit. So I was very happy with that. And the doctors basically said to my mum, like, he's gonna need a carer for the rest of his life. You're gonna have to bathe him, you're gonna have to feed him, you're gonna have to clothe him. And like I said before, I just felt like a burden. I didn't want my parents to worry about me and to do all that stuff. Like, that, I just felt like I bring my parents so much pain. There's no words that, like, I just felt like I let them down in a way, but no one knows what happened. I wish I had a story to say, like, I got hit by a car or something, but even I don't have answers. One of the days a therapist came in, and I don't want to have a go at her, but she diagnosed me with depression. And I didn't say this out loud, but I remember being in my head like, I have the right to be depressed. I'm half paralyzed. It's clear as daylight. I should be allowed to feel this way. I remember I couldn't get to sleep at night. I was just so in my own thoughts, like my life is actually over and I'm never gonna be able to do anything ever again. And I remember looking at the roof and I said, I'm ashamed to say this and I feel so much guilt, but I said, God, if you exist, this would have never happened to me. And like I said, I feel so bad saying that in that time, but I was just so frustrated and emotional. But that night, I eventually fell asleep and I had a dream that I could move my foot again, my right ankle. And I woke up and I didn't try to move it yet. And the doctors came in because they did tests every day to see if I recovered. And I told him I could move my foot. I hadn't even moved my foot yet. So he pulls up the hospital sheet and he says, show me. And I moved my ankle like this. Like, it wasn't just a tiny bit of movement, it was a lot. And he was like jumped out of his own shoes. He was so happy, he couldn't believe it. Ever since that day, I have to believe in God, and I've told no one about this, but I don't know if it was just a miracle or a coincidence or a mind-to-body connection in the dream, but I'm forever thankful that it happened. Around this time, a lot of my friends from school were messaging me. They were saying what happened, where are you? And I was trying to tell them that I was paralyzed, and they're like, what caused it or whatever? And I couldn't really explain it because even I didn't know. But a lot of people were sending me get well messages. They were wishing me good luck in my recovery, and I was really grateful for them saying that at the time. The doctor also said to my mum that I'm gonna need a wheelchair for the rest of my life. And I looked at my mum and I said, I don't care if I'm walking around on my hands and knees, I'm never gonna use a wheelchair. I'm never gonna use crutches. I'll use it around the hospital, but I'm never gonna use it when I'm back in my personal life at home. And I was very delusional. I got told every single day, you're paralyzed, you're gonna have to live a new life. I didn't want to hear anything that the doctor was saying because it was upsetting me, and it just didn't feel real. I remember it just felt like I was watching myself be paralyzed. I believed if I used any equipment that it wouldn't help me recover as much as I could have. About 3 weeks in, my mum leaves to go back home and my dad was gonna come in to stay the night to switch things up. And when my mum left and no one was watching, I tried with all my might to get out of the hospital bed. And I made it to the ground and I tried to break dance. Yes, it's so embarrassing, and I'm kind of glad there's no footage of it because it would have been a really hard watch. I remember trying to do the most basic breakdance move called a 6-step, and for the life of me, I just couldn't do it. I remember rolling around the ground and it was like an autistic person having a tantrum. And I looked up at the door and my dad was standing there, and I don't know how long he was there for, but his face was expressionless. And he came over, he picked me up, he put me back in the hospital bed, and we both didn't say anything for a few hours. I could only imagine what he was thinking. I think we both know deep down that this could be very much the rest of my life, and it's gonna be very difficult from now on out. Over the few days, I was able to recover a bit more. I could do things like stand up, although it was really difficult and it would tire me out. It was something, at least it was something. So the doctor said that it was time for me to go home. So the 32 days finishes, and I'm forever thankful for that hospital. I would never not be thankful for that hospital. They did everything they could have done for me.
Jack, can you give me a wave?
So I get back home and I'm just so upset with life. I was completely in agony and just miserable. Had so much nerve pain, I was tired. I couldn't do anything like play the Xbox, I couldn't open jars or bottles. And I had to go to rehab for 5 days a week. And I'm gonna be honest, it felt humiliating. Being there, getting taught how to use a knife and fork, it's something about it that I just hated everything about life. I just felt so robbed of my teenage adolescence in that moment. Everyone else is having a typical teenage experience and I'm here going to rehab trying to do the most basic exercises. I went back to school for about an hour or 2 a week, and the goal was to try to build up my energy levels because my chronic fatigue was just so bad. Any type of movement or mental focus just made me so tired. All my teachers were informed on me being paralyzed and to take it easy on me and that I'm not going to go back to school for long. And I go back to school and I don't know what happened, but I lost all my friends. I guess they just saw me in a different way, but not only that, the same people that were messaging me for a good recovery and to wish me well actually started bullying me. Heading towards the end of the semester, I was walking over to my locker and I felt a hand at the back of my head and my head got slammed into the lockers, and I just heard all the kids around me laughing. And right then, I kind of just disassociated with reality because I was half paralyzed. I couldn't fend for myself, I couldn't make a fist, and I was getting bullied by the people that were wishing me for a good recovery. These people that used to be my friends continued to bully me for months over Instagram, messages, Xbox Live, and they would also yell things out, like walking past my house. I can handle being paralyzed, I could handle being bullied, I could handle a few other family problems that were happening at the time, which I won't get into, but everything kind of just happened at once. And I'm not feeling sorry for myself, but I just feel so bad for that 13-year-old. After that pretty traumatic experience, I had the courage to go back to breakdancing, and I went back to my first class and everyone was so excited to see me and so happy, but still, I couldn't do any of the moves. I was rolling around the floor, and I remember crying because I was so upset with myself and where I was in life. Now it's 2014, I'm 14 years old, I've moved to a new school. I pretty much had no friends. I was on my own for about 8 months. My grades pretty much plummeted, but I still tried to do a little bit of breakdancing when I wasn't tired at home. And one day at school, it was drama class, and the teacher had us sitting on the ground, and for whatever reason, maybe it was a mix of trauma, depression, maybe a bit of ADHD or fatigue, but I just could not listen to the teacher. I grabbed both of my hands, I put them next to me, and I could lift myself up from off the ground. I just remember being like, I did not know I could do this. I went home and I showed my parents, they were pretty impressed. I went back to breakdancing, I showed them, they thought it was pretty awesome. But the most impressed people was the rehab team. The rehab team and the doctors said it should be actually impossible to do that with what I went through. And they said, with whatever you're doing at home, you need to keep at it because the exercises that we're giving you are just not as good as whatever you're doing, which was the dancing. For the next 2 years, I put so much sacrifice, energy, blood, sweat, and tears into training. I'm not even joking, I trained until I was in tears. I put so much time into it that no one ever saw, just to get the most basic human movements back. And still at that time, I was such a mediocre dancer. I wasn't even that good. I developed such a bad, well, extremely bad, toxic mentality. The things I was telling myself at 14 and 15 years old was so nasty. It amplified my depression, but I was so harsh on myself to recover and to train as much as I could. And if we're gonna get into it, I guess we are. I've never told anyone this, so it might sound weird out loud, but one of the days I was training for about 30 minutes and then I wanted to train handstands. I threw a handstand and I fell over like pretty much straight away. And I was quite upset because I could hold it. I knew I could hold it longer than that. I wouldn't fall over straight away. I built them up a bit. I threw another handstand and I fell over straight away again. And I said to myself, you were the biggest pussy on planet Earth. Get up and do another handstand. So I get up, I'm hyping myself up, I take a deep breath, I put my hands down, I do another handstand, and I fell over pretty much faster than before. And before I knew it, my brain said to me, your grandfather fought in World War II, and he was a prisoner of war. He came all the way from Italy to Australia on a boat and had nothing but a suitcase and worked the very next day upon arriving. And you can't do a handstand? Get up and do another handstand. So I get up, I have tears running down my face, I put my hands down and I try to do another handstand. I'm holding it for a bit longer, but I fell over again. And my brain said to me, your parents wake up every single morning, very early, they work every single day, they give you shelter, they give you food, and you're gonna cry because you can't do a little handstand. Get up and do it properly and do it professionally. So I get up, I've got tears running down my face at this point, like I'm breaking down, I'm saying all these nasty stuff to myself. I throw another handstand and I fell over straight away again. And maybe I just didn't have the energy that day, but I was so upset with myself. I was crying, I was breaking down, and I crawled up into a ball and I fell asleep there. That was just the tip of the iceberg of the things I was saying to myself. It was very, very bad. My parents didn't raise me to be like that. It was just a mix of everything I was going through. I just wanted to push myself as much as I could because I wanted to recover and have a normal life. I was never happy with any progress I made. I was never happy with anything that I was doing and where I was at in life because I wanted my normal life back. I feel guilt saying that because there are people out there that have been paralyzed with transverse myelitis and they're so happy and grateful for everything. I had the biggest victim mentality. I'm like, why did this happen to me? None of this deserved to happen to me. I feel so much shame because I'm walking and they're not walking, and I kept just being down and sorry for myself and trying to push myself as hard as I could. At the age of 14, 15 and 16, a lot of it's a blur to me because I went to school for a few hours and then went back home to train and then slept. I saw a lot of kids getting their education up and then hanging out after school, and I just felt so robbed of that because I couldn't do all that. I turned 17 years old and I'm training harder than ever, and actually this is when I started to become quite good at breakdancing. I gained a significant amount of strength and I was training as much as I could, whether it was 5 minutes a day or an hour. I was training a lot. But with training a lot, I ended up breaking my hand. And when I broke my hand, it hurt, not just physically, but mentally, because I couldn't train as much. I could only train everything else on one hand, and that upset me so much. So I got sucked in more to the nightlife more, like I was going out to more house parties and clubbing because that just numbed the pain. Going out and drinking with friends, it just felt like I found that childhood-like happiness that I was after all those teen years. I know I made a lot of good memories, but I kind of knew deep down long-term that it's not the best for me. And in the next year or so, my hand recovered, but I got another injury. I got a pinched nerve in the lower back of my tailbone. And I'm not joking when I say this, having a pinched nerve in the lower back of my tailbone was worse than being paralyzed. I've never felt so much pain in my life. I do not wish it on my worst enemy. I could not lie down, I could not sit, I could not do anything without it hurting. I started to see doctors, was on medication, got x-rays, but none of them knew what was causing it. For 4 years, I had that lower back nerve pain, and it was the absolute worst pain I've felt in my life. I remember in lockdown 2020, I kind of knew deep down that I was retiring from breakdancing, and it was hard to accept that because I really loved it. I told myself many things over the years, like I was going to become world champ, because I knew if I believed in it, then I would recover better. That mind to body connection, even if you're delusional, it helps you recover and to train more. And to this day, I'm going to say this, breakdancing is the most underrated dance, art, sport ever. There are not many things where you have to have strength, flexibility, coordination, rhythm, improvisation. It is one of the best things to exist. I'm so happy. I love it. I can't get over it. I still think it's underrated. Unfortunately for me, it was just too much on the body. I don't know what happened in 2021. For some reason, that lower pain started to go away. Lockdown ended and I went to my nearest gym, and I've been training 6 days a week for the last 4 years. The only times I haven't trained was when I've been traveling. For some reason, I had to prove something to myself. I said, like, if I can't do this, then I can't do anything. Yeah, I'm never proud of myself, and I'm not just saying that for the camera. That's genuinely how I feel all the time. Some of my friends say to me, like, how do you have the discipline to train? And I just have that trauma. The days I don't want to train, which is every single day, I hate training. People actually think I enjoy it. I hate training with all my life. But the days I don't want to train, I think back to when I was in that hospital bed. I couldn't move my body and I was just looking at it, stuck in a prison. And it wasn't about being strong like Arnold. It wasn't about proving anything to anybody. It was about proving it to myself that I could do it. It's like a non-negotiable. I felt like the next step was to join the military, and I applied for the military. I did all the paperwork. Then I had to do the medical examination, and I really thought about lying on it, but I told the truth. I said I've transverse myelitis, and the military rejected me. And look, I completely understand why they rejected me, but now I'm kind of directionless because I thought that was going to be the next step into giving me more life experience. I know this video was kind of a low vibe and kind of pessimistic, but I'm not lying when I say this. Being paralyzed was the best thing to ever happen to me. When I was a younger teenager, I had the biggest victim mentality. I was like, why did this happen to me? And now at this age, I'm like, I'm glad that happened to me. It has forced me to get out of my comfort zone. It has forced me to do more. I've done more in the last couple of years of my life than I've done my entire life. I've traveled more, I've gone ziplining, ATVing, cliff jumping. I even did my first Toastmasters class the other day, which my teenager self would have never pictured happening. My younger self was so anxiety driven, hated everything, never saw anything positive. But now I've switched that mentality and understand this. We have one shot at this life, and then when time is up, there is no second chance. Live every single day to the fullest, because one day you could blink and your life could change forever. We take this life for granted, and it took me being paralyzed to just appreciate life and see how precious life is. One day you'll be 80 years old, reflecting back on your life, and you don't want to live with the regrets. So embrace the pain and the discomfort, face those fears, and enjoy everything from the absolute happiest moments of your life to the absolute saddest moments of your life. And people will judge you for being yourself, but you can't let that stop you from living your life to the fullest and chasing your dreams. In 200 years, no one's even going to remember us, so make the absolute most of everything and become the best version of yourself. I'm so lucky to be where I'm at because I shouldn't be doing the things that I am doing. And yeah, that's pretty much the end of this video. I hope it's inspiring. I hope it's going to encourage people to do more, to be the best version of themselves. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Till the next story or video.